Hello everyone, welcome to another collection video. Now, last video, which was a while ago actually, I looked at all the Korean bootleg albums of Western artists that I own, and I wanted that video to be sort of a gateway into getting people interested in Korean records, so I could talk about the next subject in this on this channel, which is a bunch of Korean rock and folk artists and whatnot, because I love talking about it. There's a lot of good stuff in there. I have quite a few rare records and stuff. Not a lot actually, compared to some other high-level collectors, but I do have quite a few impressive stuff. And I thought, you know, I did kind of literally write a book on it. So check this out on Amazon, by the way. But enough of that. Let's talk about Korean rock. So in these Korean rock videos, obviously because I'm talking in English, a lot of you will not be very familiar with these artists, so I'll be going through some of the history as well, not just showing off the records, because most people knew about the Western albums I showed off, not so much these ones. But yeah, I thought what better of an artist to start off the series but with the Godfather of Korean rock, Shin Joong Hyun. So Shin Joong Hyun, along with most of Korean rock in its infancy, started out in the 8th Army bases, US Army bases that were situated in various places in Korea. Now these US Army bases had variety of performances from people like Marilyn Monroe flying in, but obviously that was very impractical to do every night. So instead they hired a bunch of Korean musicians. At first they played a lot of jazz, a lot of big band stuff, and then when rock and roll came in, and a lot of like the Beatles came in, they started covering a lot of Beatles songs and rock songs from the time, and that's where rock bands spawned. Shin Joong Hyun also performed in these bases, and this is his first debut album, Hikishin Guitar Melody. Hikishin is a Korean version of his nickname Jackie Shin, which was the name he went by in these army bases. And this instrumental album is a bunch of Korean children's folk songs interpreted into this jazzy sort of rock style. And this was recorded in 1958, but it is theorized to have been released sometime around 1963. This it's off as a 2006 reissue. I also have a 2019 remastered version of it right here, and I also have the 2024 remastered version, which they claim this is the definitive version of the album, and you can still pretty much pick this up in Korea if you wish. Now, he obviously had a band during this time, and the band was called the Ad 4, and the Ad 4 was very much based off of the Beatles. Now this is the first ever Ad 4 album. This is another 2006 reissue. It's called Woman in the Rain, the Ad 4 first album there. And although bands like the Keyboys had released albums before this record, this was the first album to have been entirely composed by the band, and by the band I mean it's just composed by Shin Joong Hyun, but it still counts. All 14 songs, all originals. The Beatles couldn't even do a full 14 original album during '64 when this was released. This was released in December of 1964, and the reason why I brought this one out, because as you can see the album cover pretty well. Obviously the Sobe strip is sort of blocking it, but you could see it very well there, the band. And this later got a reissue with this sleeve. Now this is still a 64 pressing. There's a couple of different pressings. Again, I'll link my website koreanrockalbums.com in the description, where you can navigate yourself to the Ad 4 section, where I talk about all the different pressings of these albums. You can just sort of assume that apart from the most recent pressings or some of the CD ones, these are all going to be insanely priced. This cost me a lot of money. This usually goes for a few thousand quid, honestly. I got this for way less than that, but it doesn't play all the songs. It sort of skips and stuff, unfortunately. But I'm still amazed to have this. This is one of the greatest Korean rock albums of all time, just simply because it's how historic it is. Yeah, there's great songs on here as well. So that is the ad for first album. So a significant album like this should have been a commercial success, but unfortunately it was not. And that sort of deterred Shin Joong Hyun. Oh yeah, by the way, here is a 2017 reissue of that same album. That sort of deterred Shin Joong Hyun, and the ad for never really released another album like that. They released a couple others, which I'll show you now. They released this album, ad for with singer Kim Young-guk. They're backing the singer basically, and yeah, this is sort of a covers album really, and the singer is sort of an Elvis Presley impersonator, so it's sort of interesting listen. And this is mainly for Shin Joong Hyun's guitar abilities rather than his songwriting abilities. But yeah, that is a 2017 reissue of that album, and this is a 2026 reissue of that album with a later version of the album cover as the front sleeve. And then they also put out this instrumental album, Boy in the Yellow Shirt. It's just surf rock instrumentals. But yeah, another rare one. Anything with the ad for name you can assume is gonna be valuable. So this is the ad for's Boy in the Yellow Shirt instrumental album. They also had this album in 1968. However, the band broke up in 1966. So what this is this first side. This is very confusing, and there's a section on my ad for Korean rock album site. On the ad for section, you go into an album called By the Actions, and you can see an explanation there. But basically, the gist of it, the A side is a bunch of songs from not the ad for, but the Actions, which was the band Shin Joong Hyun had after the ad for collapsed, and the B side is a bunch of Western surf rock songs just stolen, not even them playing it. So this is sort of ploy by the record label to put out another ad for album after Shin Joong Hyun got popular. Now, how did Shin Joong Hyun get popular? Now, he did release a couple. Now, I'm not going to show you all the Shin Joong Hyun albums I own because there's just so many spread across so many different artists. But basically, he started giving out his songs to artists. So this is Lee Jung-ha, forgotten these days by the general public in Korea. But check out these two albums because these are really good psychedelic rock stuff. But basically, he'd been slowly inching towards psych rock, and in 1968. Just before he was about to leave to perform in Vietnam because he wasn't getting any success in Korea, he helped put out this album by a sister duo called the Pearl Sisters. Now this, after it was released, became a massive hit, which launched Shin Joong Hyun into stardom, and this was 1968. And that's why that one ad for album is also, the fake ad for album is also 1968. I theorize that was probably released in response to this success. And Pearl Sisters put out a lot of other albums, some with Shin Joong Hyun, some with not, some without him. And another singer that was made popular because Shin Joong Hyun helped her debut was Kim Chuja. This is her debut album. Now, this is a Kim Chuja debut album, obviously, and that's significant for that reason, but a lot of foreign record collectors seek this out for a track that isn't actually sung by her on this album. It's sung by a male singer called Kim Sun, and it's a Shin Joong Hyun song called The Man Who Must Leave, and that is like a 7 minute long epic psychedelic masterpiece, and that's why people try to seek that one out. And obviously Shin Joong Hyun worked with Kim Chuja a lot as well, along with a bunch of different singers. He also put out film soundtracks where he directed the film score. So for example, this is a film called Green Apple. Original pressing, another really rare one. Basically anything with the Shin Joong Hyun name, you can sort of assume the early first pressings are going to be very expensive and rare. But yeah, that is Green Apple, and then, yeah, that is Green Apple. And then he went through a bunch of different bands, as I said, the ad for the Actions, and then he went with the Donkeys, and then he made a new group called the Questions. Most of these bands were just sort of backing singers, really. The singers that Shin Joong Hyun helped write songs for and stuff like that. But the Questions put out this live album. Now, this one was actually a bootleg recording, but it's interesting because it's bootleg recording made without permission of any of the artists featured on here. However, it was actually recorded by the record label owner, the guy Shin Joong Hyun was signed to. So this is sort of an official bootleg, but made without permission, which is a really weird case. But why this is significant? One, there's an amazing cover of Funky Broadway at the end of side 1 on here, and side 2 is entirely taken up by Shin Joong Hyun and The Question's cover of Enegada da Vida, which is a brilliant cover, absolutely wonderful. Unfortunately, obviously, the audio quality does suffer because it is a bootleg recording, but this is a great album to pick up. First pressings, insane amount of money, like tens of thousands worth, but you know. And then he creates another band after The Questions called The Men. This is an album he released with singer Jang Hyun, which is another singer he helped debut, another singer that got really popular. And this one is significant because around the time of making this album, Shin Joong Hyun got a call from the dictatorship government of Korea at the time, asking him to write a song praising the South Korean president, Park Chung-hee at the time. And he refused, which he shouldn't have done, honestly, because that made him a target. But instead, he didn't write the song praising the government and the president. Instead, he wrote a song called Beautiful Rivers and Mountains, which first appears on this album, which just praises instead the beautiful landscapes and nature of South Korea, which is an amazing move. That's very, very punk rock of it. But yeah, that basically put him on a hit list, and a lot of his songs did end up getting banned by the government. Another great album. This is the most expensive single album I've ever bought. This is Kim Jung-mi's Wind, or Baram, and this is just an incredible first pressing, honestly. I don't want to say how much I paid for this, but it was over 1,000. But Kim Jung-mi is another one of those artists that never was really that popular originally, but then they're getting recognized more and more. A lot of Japanese and American collectors are looking for Kim Jung-mi albums. Kim Jung-mi album has been reissued in like Japan and the US before as well. And this is one of her best ones. Another one of her great albums is called Now. Unfortunately, I only have a reissue of that, so I'm just showing you the first pressing that I have of this. And she has a very sort of strong psychedelic voice fit for this genre, and it's amazing. You should check her out. And then finally, after The Men sort of ended, Shin Joong Hyun realized, instead of giving all these hits to other artists and not really getting enough from them, why don't he sing his own songs, make his own band, and do all of it by himself? So he came up with a trio called Shin Joong Hyun and Yeopjeon, sort of inspired by the Jimi Hendrix Experience, the first ever sort of real rock trio in Korea, and came out with Shin Joong Hyun and Yeopjeon's Volume 1, Beautiful Woman. And Beautiful Woman became an insane hit in Korea. Very psychedelic, very funk psychedelic sort of song. However, this is a second pressing, because a first pressing has a different recording on it. The first pressing recordings are very sort of, it was longer, it was more experimental, and then the record label convinced him to make a more commercialized version, which is this, and that's what became the hit. But in 2012, Lion Records in the US, I think it's a subsidiary of Light in the Attic, put out this reissue, which it has a different cover, but it is supposed to be the first original, more psychedelic, more experimental recording of the album. Both are great, I think, honestly. I also have this version, which was pressed 5 days after this one. It's not in the greatest condition, you know. And it was going great, and Shin Joong Hyun was even starring in a movie. The band was as well, and it was all going great until a bunch of his songs started getting banned by the government, and the original planned second album, which was very psychedelic, very experimental, full of very long form songs as well, and This is the 2022 reissue, anyways. And a lot of his songs start getting banned. So the original plan for the original second album was canned. There's a few bootleg recordings of that on the internet, but he put out a different version of the second album. This is a reissue, unfortunately, because the original is very expensive. But this is a bunch of songs without any of the psychedelic urge to it. It's very sort of safe songs, about reunification, about loving our country. Very sort of safe songs to please the government. Although the last song on here is a version of Beautiful Rivers and Mountains, the song he wrote praising the mountains and nature of Korea. Despite his efforts, this was banned, and Shin Joong Hyun was actually thrown in prison during the 1975 marijuana scandal. There was no drugs involved, especially not in 1975. It was basically a way for the government to suppress him, and along with him and a bunch of other young musicians, the youth movement, and just sort of control him. And he couldn't perform until the end of 1979 when Park Chung-hee, the President Park Chung-hee, was assassinated. He finally made a comeback in 1980 with Shin Joong Hyun and Music Power. This was around the time when psychedelic was out and disco was coming in. So he tried to make a comeback with this disco influenced album. Didn't make a hit. Now, I have a couple of pressings of this album, which very, very good reason for these. Now, a lot of the ones people might have is this version. Looks identical, but I don't know if you can see. But on the label, it has Shin Joong Hyun's name written in Korean. Now, there is a slightly rarer version of this. Looks identical, but the name on the label is in Hanja, or the Chinese sort of Korean version of Chinese. Now, there's an even rarer version of this. Now, if you look on the normal back cover of these, it looks like this. It just says Shin Joong Hyun and Music Power up top. There's the normal track listing, nothing wrong there. However, this ultra rare version of Shin Joong Hyun and Music Power, the absolute sort of first pressing, which is this one, if you look on the back, that is not the one I'm looking for. That is the wrong one. I'm getting confused. It's supposed to be this one. Yeah, they all look identical from the front. That's why I'm getting confused. But yeah, it's supposed to look like this, where it has this unique Shin Joong Hyun and Music Power logo there. And if you look closely, there was supposed to be a song called Shinelmul there, which has been blocked out, and they added a military song at the end because in the 1980s, a lot of albums didn't necessarily require you put on a military song on the album, but it was heavily advised, especially if you didn't want your music getting banned. And another version of this album you see in the wild is this, which is not a gatefold. All the other ones are gatefolds, but it also has a little lyric insert as well, since it's not a gatefold. And then obviously there's the most recent repressing of this from 2022. And then in that same year, he also put out a sort of solo album, just called Shin Joong Hyun. It's an interesting listen, but it's nothing too special. And then in 1982, he puts out Music Power Volume 2, and this is way more geared towards hard rock sound that he was actually interested in, not sort of following the trend of disco. This was actually the stuff he was interested in. This is a first pressing. It's almost identical to the reissue, but I just wanted to have a genuine first pressing. And that one is also really hard to find for some reason. In 1983, with that newfound love for hard rock, he formed a new group, Shin Joong Hyun and Se Nagune, which is Three Travelers. It translates to Three Travelers. And the bassist on here is the same bassist as Shin Joong Hyun and Yapjeon's, Inami. So it's quite significant there. And it's another trio group, just like the Yapjeons as well. A lot of good hard rock songs on here. And this is a 2019 reissue of that album. 1984, it was weird because Music Power had already broken up, and Shin Joong Hyun and Se Nagune, the Three Travelers, already released an album. For some reason, they put out another Music Power album, and this was called Music Power Medley. I think what I'm theorizing here is this is a contractual obligation album. They put out a bunch of medleys. So there's a Shin Joong Hyun hit song medley, there's a Faded Away song, so a lot of Korean oldies medley. There's a pop song medley, and a version of Beautiful Rivers and Mountains is on here as well. Shin Joong Hyun and Se Nagune unfortunately put out one album. It was great. It was great hard rock music, but unfortunately it was just one album. But they did back this singer called Park Jang-mi, who was one of the vocalists in the Music Power band, and Shin Joong Hyun gave a bunch of songs to her, backed her with his band, and this album came out, which is a great listen. Very rare, very expensive these days, unfortunately, but you know, that was another great run. And then, but a string of Shin Joong Hyun solo albums follow. So there's stuff like his greatest hits, which is half sort of greatest hits from years gone by and half re-recorded stuff. And then he also puts out his last album with newly recorded, newly written songs. Here from 1988. Here's a reissue of that as well. And then after 1988, he puts out a series of a bunch of CDs. Most of these are re-recordings of his old hits. None of which are that significant. And then he announces his retirement in 2006. However, in 2011, he starts gaining more attraction from the West, and a US label called Light in the Attic decides to put out this compilation, Beautiful Rivers and Mountains, which doesn't pick out his most popular songs, but instead picks out songs that are the most experimental, most psychedelic. And then they also put out this digital EP, which only got a physical release in 2024, which has even more stuff on here, called From Where to Where. And then finally in 2019 he releases his big comeback album called Shin Joong Hyun for Tribute Guitar, because yes, 10 years before this, in 2009, Fender actually gave him a custom guitar, custom tribute guitar, which he was the first Asian to get that from Fender. So this album is a bunch of songs he previously released but he re-recorded. He said in the liner notes that he tried not to pick out all the hits, but he tried to pick out songs that best demonstrate his guitar abilities, because it's an album to show off his new guitar. And also he has 2 new songs that he has written called Love Me and Those Days, which is a great little retrospective of his life. Shin Joong Hyun lives in the woods now. He hasn't really put out anything since 2019. He hasn't really had any real public appearances. He's been sort of quiet, really. There was talks of that album originally being a double album, and then there was talks of it being 2 separate albums, but the second album never materialized. He's doing fine. Yeah, that's about it. That's the very brief history of Shin Joong Hyun, the Godfather of Korean rock. Basically the guy who started it all. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.